We begin with some shocking and disturbing exclusive video. It's getting a lot of attention. A toddler holding a handgun in the hallway of an apartment complex. Take a look at this. That child wearing only a diaper, seen waving the gun around and at one point pointing the firearm at his own face. A 45-year-old man now facing charges after he was arrested during a broadcast of NewsNation host Dan Abrams' show On Patrol Live. I will be speaking live with Dan in just a moment. He watched this all play out in real time. But first, Eric Graves with our Indianapolis affiliate WXIN joins us live with the details on this investigation.
Nichole, police came to that Beech Grove, Indiana apartment over the weekend with people calling in saying that there was a child there playing with a gun. One neighbor I spoke to says she saw the child a whole hour and a half before police showed up in a diaper, alone, just walking around the hallways of the apartment complex.
He's playing what he thinks is a toy, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. You see the child pulling the trigger. You see where the gun is pointed at.
A father has been arrested in a near tragic Saturday night in Beech Grove. The entire arrest played on TV over the reality police show On Patrol Live.
Hello, Beech Grove Police!
And the report was, as you stated, a small child with a firearm.
Police body cam shows that same small child answered the door when police knocked. Deputy Chief Robert Mercury says neighbors at the Beach Meadows apartments called police because they opened their own door to the child holding a gun.
He pointed it at me and said, "Look what I got."
He had a gun.
We spoke with one neighbor who says she had seen the child wandering around in just a diaper alone an hour and a half before police got there.
My first thought was, I don't want him to go outside and get hit by a car.
It wasn't until officers showed up later that she found out the child had been playing with a gun.
Had he shot through the floor, or like she said, he could have shot through somebody's door, it's just really, it's scary.
The father of the child, Shane Osborne, initially says he doesn't have a gun in the house, effectively ending the police investigation until a neighbor comes forward with this doorbell video. You see and hear the trigger pulled as the child spins around. Police then searched the apartment and found a semi-automatic Smith & Wesson 9mm pistol. Seen here on body cam video, the gun was found inside a desk that was closed when officers first entered the apartment. The gun had 15 rounds in the magazine.
We were really close to just a horrible tragedy.
But luckily, there was not a bullet in the chamber.
Had that been one in there, I mean, we can only imagine the sadness that we'd be all talking about right now.
The father is seen on Patrol Live leaving his apartment in handcuffs. He's charged with child neglect. Mercury says this should be an important message to all parents and gun owners.
Just use your brain, just be thoughtful, be responsible, and know that the stakes are ever higher when you have children at home.
Shane Osborne, the father of that child seen with the gun, is due in court tomorrow on child neglect charges. It's unclear right now if there could be any other charges in this case. We do know that child is now with his mother. DCS is investigating. Here in Indianapolis, I'm Eric Graves. Back to you.
Yeah, glad that toddler's okay. Great reporting there, Eric. Thank you. Joining us now is Dan Abrams, host of On Patrol Live and NewsNation's Dan Abrams Live. Dan, thank you so much for being here. That video is so hard to watch. You're watching it all unfold during your show in real time. This became anything but an ordinary call.
And I have to tell you that live, I became almost at a loss for words, right? The minute we saw the video, and if you replay the live feed of it, where we first get in the surveillance footage of the child holding the gun and pulling the trigger, it was it really impacts you. Anyone, I think, who's got a child, I have a child, who's 2 years old, and it always goes through your head, oh my goodness, what if something like that were to happen? The key, of course, from an adult perspective is making sure it doesn't happen. But as you're watching it, it's just so heartbreaking to see that child there. And of course, remember the guy who was in the home had initially not just denied that his child had a gun, he denied he even had a gun in the house at all. He said, well, I do have a relative who maybe is here sometimes, etc. The problem for him was that when they found the gun, it was in a desk that it opens and closes all the way back in the corner of the desk, making it, tougher for him to argue that somehow the child had put it back there.
You know, and Dan, it's so hard to watch this video, you know, as it's unfolding, but we know the officers are also responding to this in real time. How tense was that?
Well, it was very tense. And I'll tell you that when the officers first went into the house, they didn't have the video, right? The dad's basically woken up and he says, oh, there's no gun here. That didn't happen. The officers are preparing to leave. They actually go down and say to the neighbors, hey, you know, if this happens again, you know, let us know. And then another neighbor comes out and says, hey, I have this video from last week. And, you know, the fact that this is happening repeatedly, right? I mean, that's what makes this almost even worse, is this apparently wasn't even a one-time thing.
Yeah, and just to think, you know, if God forbid there were a bullet in there. Dan, as you know, just weeks ago, you know, we talked about the 6-year-old who allegedly shot his teacher. Now this. How are guns ending up in the hands of such small children?
Well, and you know, what's interesting is that the laws vary state to state with regard to storing weapons. Some states have laws, others don't. But no matter what state you're in, if a toddler or a 6-year-old ends up with a weapon in their hand, in their book bag, wherever it is going to be the parent's responsibility in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't mean necessarily the parent will always be charged with a crime, but it means when it comes to the responsibility for what happens, when it's a child this young, it has to be the parent's responsibility. And that's not a gun control debate, right? That's just a debate about parenting.
Well, Dan, you know, of course, you are following this on your show tonight. Give us a preview of what you'll be talking about.
So we're going to talk to the Beech Grove Police Department live on my show tonight about exactly what happened, how it went down. We're going to actually show more of a kind of a frame by frame of arriving at the scene, what the neighbor says, finding the surveillance footage, and then ultimately, of course, ending in the arrest of that man. But I'm just pausing because I'm having the same reaction that I had at the time when it was happening live, which is this horrified, sort of shocked and very emotional response to seeing it every time I see that little child waving around that loaded .45.
I'm just so glad that child is okay. Dan Abrams, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.